Well, welcome. Hopefully all of you are having a great Wednesday here in Wisconsin or wherever you're tuning in. I want to welcome you to our transportation tidbits session today. This is our second year of providing these sessions for folks in transportation areas across the state of Wisconsin. Our focus today is to talk about preparing for the first day of school as it relates to transportation. Our next slide shows you who is participating in our webinar today. But we wanted to give you some resources, so we put our names on here and the school districts that we're from. One thing we wanted to do is kind of show you a TikTok video that our school transportation team sent to me this year. As you know, this beginning of the school year is super stressful, and I sure appreciated their humor on what they felt like the school year starts with. So we're going to just show this to you if you haven't seen it before.
School secretary, school starts next week, so don't get on my nerves. How can I help you? You wanted to talk about your child's transportation form that you turned in. Okay, what did you need to say? Okay, she has two different addresses that she'll be going to, but it's on the same bus. Okay, that makes things a little bit easier. She's going to her dad sometimes and her mom sometimes. So which day is she going to which address? Oh, you don't know. You're going to play it by ear. So let me get this straight. You want a kindergarten teacher with 24 kids and a bus driver driving home 45 kids to figure out which bus stop your child goes to each day. No, we ain't gonna do that. No, that's called the making of a disaster. How about this? You pick one bus stop Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and if that's not where she's supposed to get off, then you can get in your car and drive over there and meet her. Yeah, but we ain't just going to random, willy-nilly pick what days your kids are going to what bus stop. All right. You have a good day. Talk to you later. Good Lord!
Well, I'm sure some of you have experienced like that at some point for a variety of reasons. And, those are always the thought bubbles I have sometimes at the end of the conversation when, you got an upset parent and you want to say something that's on your mind, but everybody does such a great job of being as customer service friendly as we can with our parents because, at the end of the day, transportation is such a big deal to them. So a little bit about New London. New London has, just over 2,000 students in the district. We transport about 12 to 1,300 kids each year. We have 30 routes. If you're including our van routes and our special ed routes. So there's a lot of transportation that happens every day. I failed to mention at the beginning, but we have our own transportation fleet in New London. And this is just a couple things I wanted to share with each of you that are able to tune in today. We travel 300,000 miles every year in transportation, which is amazing when you think about it. Our drivers are putting a ton of effort in every year to try and get our students to school, to events, home, and on all of those things. And it really takes a lot of people to make that happen. And I stress that with everybody who talks about transportation when they're frustrated, because that's often when we only hear from them. We don't get the calls about, well, thank you for being on time, thank you for waiting for me. They only call when they're frustrated, and that's why we have a couple great people in our transportation office that do an awesome job of taking those calls, and Tara and Katie do such an awesome job for New London, and Josh in our bus garage is awesome. So I see one person did just message in. It says, all I see is a black screen with a green border. If any else is having some issues, just share in the chat so we can make sure that our webinar is going okay. Is everybody else able to see?
You see it now?
Yeah, we get some thumbs up there. So we'll keep going. One of the things that I feel is successful for New London is in the heat of the moment, trying to change something is difficult. I always share with them, come up with, what are the things you really want to change for the upcoming year that are on the high to-do list? And trying to work through that as an organization is really important, whether it comes specifically from the transportation department or our board committee that is there, or however we feel we can improve. I think that really sets the stage, and the words New London is always using is we want to continuously improve in everything that we do. If you look at it that way, I feel like it brings some levity to the situation, because transportation can definitely be stressful at a lot of times during the year. And people forget, like I mentioned, how important it is to get students to and from school and all the events that we have. Uh, One of the other things is communication. All of you know this, but you cannot ever over communicate when it comes to transportation. And we really start that in New London with our drivers. We have them come in August, just like many of you do. We sit down, give them some food, talk to them about the school year, get their pictures taken, all of those things to kind of set the stage for the beginning of the year. It lets them express some of their thoughts, and it really starts in that mid-August of, all right, we're getting ready. Everybody's going to be back on the road soon. Here are some things that change, things we're going to try to do differently. Then from there, we really need to let our schools know that you are just as important to our transportation program as the transportation department themselves. We can't do it alone. We need your help to make sure you let us know anything that you can about transportation as early as you can, so we can start making those changes as early as possible. Sometimes one or two students changing on a route can really change a lot of things. We also talk about communicating with our students those expectations, because it's drivers do their very best to try and share the ridership rules, but our students need to be able to understand what it takes to ride the bus too. It is a privilege, and it's important to stress that as positive as you can. And that can be different from a kindergarten student to a junior in high school. But sharing those expectations is really important. And we really want to communicate with our parents as much as we can, whether it's our superintendent using our software to call out and say, hey, the dry route or dry run, as we call it, is happening. Look for your bus. Making sure we're there at open house. There's drivers that sit at our schools to just let those first time riders know when the bus is going to be there and how it happens, because this is normal operations for us, but sometimes parents, they're new to the district, new to the bus, and we want to get them to believe in our transportation program too, because those of you who are involved in other parts of the operation of your district, if students don't ride the bus home when they're eligible, they'll be right in front of the school and lining up in their cars, and then that creates congestion and another safety issue. So we want parents to feel very confident in using the school buses for transportation. So letting parents know what's going on is really important for a lot of reasons. And then also talking to our Board of Education. This is finishing my 13th year here in New London, and we have ups and downs a lot with transportation. That's real life, and our board will always hear the negatives, and then they'll call and say, well, what about this? What about that? Why aren't you doing this? Why can't we do that? And it's really important to have that constant communication with the school board about what is going on, so they know that there truly is a plan, and we are being proactive, not reactive, whenever we can, to what makes sense with the transportation that we're doing. Sometimes it encourages them to make policy changes as well. And policy changes can be hard. For example, in New London, we do a lot of in-town transportation that we're not required to, because they're less than 2 miles from the schools and not uh, in a hazardous area, but we still do that transportation. But as soon as you try to tighten up the policy, that's immediately when there's phone calls going out. Parents are frustrated. They don't understand, why can't they get on the bus? The bus drives by every day right there. All they got to do is get on. And those are the type of things you want to keep in constant communication with your board, so they can help support you too behind the scenes. I realize when a person calls a board member and I know that they're elected, the board member is doing their very best to help them, and we want them to say, would you please call the transportation department or the district office, and they can help you. But they want to help too. And sometimes they can share and say, well, yeah, you should get picked up. And then, we're in a difficult situation to try and remedy that at times. And that definitely, I'm sharing this because it does happen, and it's happened in New London, but that's why that constant communication with the board is important. Reviewing accident protocols. I know all of you do this, but I can't stress how important that is enough, because in New London, unfortunately, we've had some significant accidents over the years. This is definitely not always a first day item, but even though this is really focusing on the first day, this is relevant to the entire year, because anything can happen at any time, and there's nothing more scary than that. We've had a couple accidents on major highways and just scary, scary situations, but you want to make sure you have that flow chart, the communication process, who is going to do what, who is going to go where and when. And sometimes you got to make sure you practice those things so you're ready in that event, because for parents, even if you call them within an hour, they're still mad. Why didn't you call me right away? They find out through cell phones or videos or whatever immediately, and so it's really important to be organized and prepared to put your best forward as a school district. For New London, I put down key leaders should be visible. This might not always be something you can do, but our superintendent and I are right across from the middle school, our district office, and we go over to the middle school just about every day, and we're there during our transfer point. We want drivers to see us. We want students to see us. We want the parents driving by to see us and know that we care. And it's not just something that we take for granted. We want to be visible, not only the first day, but every day whenever possible. Some may say, well, that's not, what you should be doing, Joe. It's you get paid to do a lot of other things, and it's very true. But it's 10 minutes that can go a long way, and being there to talk to bus drivers, thank them for all of the hard work that they do. Drivers want to tell you what they think. They don't keep things internal. They definitely will tell you. Kind of the last suggestion that I wanted to share is testing those operations leading up to the first day. A couple things that happen to us every once in a while is we have a repeater that sends signals to the northern and southern parts of our school district, and sometimes they go offline. And when your radio transmissions don't work, because they might work in town when you do the first radio check, but they might not work farther away you get from a school or wherever your towers are. And radios are really important to be able to communicate. So we try to test those as much as we can. Sometimes they go offline, but we find ways to kick them into gear again and get them to work. Cameras, not everybody is able to have cameras on the bus, but we do. And even though we wish we had more of them, we want to make sure that they're working. They help us make sure that we can document and see things that can help us improve our transportation. We don't have a lot of stop arm cameras, but the ones that we do, we want to make sure those work then we can. And those basic things that are important to the fleet that every driver is supposed to be doing a pre-trip and post-trip, but some of the little things kind of can get overlooked at times. So kind of the last thing I wanted to share with is that, and kind of lastly, that overall appreciation to your drivers is so important, so they realize that they're just not an extra and they're super important to your operations. So next I'm going to hand this off.
Nice
All
job,
right.
Joe.
Thanks, Joe. I have such a lag, so then I hit to go to the next screen and then it doesn't. So sometimes it jumps. There we go.
You still on dial-up over there in Sun Prairie?
I don't know. All right. So I think launching a successful first day, we've just put together some broad categories and things that have worked for our districts. And I'm sure many of you are doing a lot of these things, but we'll talk about, a key is organization and planning. And you just want to make sure you start early and you have set clear expectations for all parties. In Sun Prairie, I'm Rhonda Page, the business manager for the Sun Prairie School District. We contract out and we use Cobison buses as our contractor. We have come up with a really nice monthly to-do calendar that we look at actually weekly during our those busy times starting in summer. I mean, we're starting July 1. We are off and running with transportation for the following year. And so it's not a celebration of a new school year, really. It's like, oh gosh, we're planning already. No, it is a celebration, but we have very definitive timelines for duties and what's related to the contractor and what's related to or what's for the district. So I think really defining those roles, especially when you have a contractor and what those timelines are, is useful. As we have all been accustomed to, staffing is a huge struggle, and staying on top of and knowing if there's going to be adequate staffing is, you need to stay on top of that. We don't want to be in the news for buses arriving hours late or picking up dropping off hours late or picking up at schools super late. And we in Sun Prairie about 2 years ago tied some work. So we were going through a boundary change, and we knew with the staffing shortage, we needed to do a bell time change. We were a 1-tier system in Sun Prairie, and we just did not have enough drivers to continue with that. So we moved to a 2-tier system and significantly decreased the amount of drivers needed. So now pretty much every route is double tiered and runs a elementary route and a secondary route. But we knew that was a definite need, and took the time to do all of that planning, and was super useful in avoiding complaints and having kids arrive late or wait at the end of the day for buses. Every year, I think it's just really good to look at all of your policies and procedures, just making sure you're reviewing your eligibility, that nothing is changing, looking at your walking distances, determining if there's going to be any changes there. Looking at as the video, how many pickups are you going to do for kids, or can they go somewhere every different day of the week, or are you limiting your pickups and drop-offs to just one site? And as things get and resources become more sparse, maybe looking at those and reducing some of those options might be needed. And we have done that in some Prairie. Kids could go and have multiple buses and multiple days of the week, and we're trying to not allow that as much. I think one other thing, and I think Joe maybe mentioned this, is just make sure you don't change too many things at once, and that you don't bite off more than you can chew, right? So just take that into consideration when you're looking at making any changes and documenting all of that in your organization and planning. All right. I think Joe stated in his first slide as well, we cannot over communicate. So communication with our multiple stakeholders is definitely the key to our success. And I've listed a couple different stakeholders. So with families, just making sure that they are always up to date on knowing what the busing information is, however you get your communications out. I mean, we use mass communication systems, and our parents can also look up their information in Infinite Campus, our student database. Others might use their routing software where parents can see their busing information, but making sure they always know up-to-date busing information, rider expectations, keeping forms and everything very accessible on the website, having everything hopefully in more of an electronic forms. We have found very useful I do, and my secretary, our 2-person team, we make bus tags for all students. We have about 5,300 bus riders. And so we make these cute little butterflies and crabs and whatever route they're on for elementary. We make all of those stickers for the kids, and we hand them out at the back to school events. And a lot of the events my secretary and myself are at, right? Because the more families that we can get to and talk to about transportation and give them information, the less phone calls we're going to take. So being visible at as many of those events as we can, we're at those events, handing out the bus tags, giving all the busing information, and making sure we get any information we can to families. We have 14 different schools that we do transport to. We transport to about 10 different daycare and school locations for 4K, and we have private schools as well. So we also make sure that we're involved in the 4K events at the daycare sites and at the private schools. Our next stakeholder really is that communication with the schools, right? They are those principals and secretaries and teachers are on the front lines. They're the ones dealing with the transportation day in, day out at the schools. We have lots of informational folders and specific that we put in for every school, exactly what they need for their bus lineups and their route sheets, and where they document their bus conduct issues. So I think just having a system in place of getting the information directly to those on the front lines with everything they need, especially if you do have bus video or audio, right? Like, we have rolled out a new system for that. So getting tutorials and information in their hands on how they do request bus video or offload their own bus video, and how they get that information quickly. As Joe said, he is very present at buses every day. We encourage because we have so many sites, it's hard for leaders at our district office to be there all the time, but really getting staff and principal presence. Not always the principals, but at least staff members out at the buses every day, talking with the drivers, finding out anything that they need. For those that outsource to a contractor, keeping that communication open as well is key to success. Our Sun Prairie and Cobeson buses, we meet weekly. And usually those meetings, we like to keep them to an hour, but sometimes they're an hour and a half or 2 hours. We find a district our size that I really think it's helped us stay on top of things a lot more, having those weekly meetings. And I know it's an hour a week, but I think it's helped stay on top of everything. We also, our drivers meet monthly to go over safety topics and go through different driver trainings. And we're trying to make sure that we're getting principals and other staff there every month to talk with the drivers and go over things a lot more related to connecting with students and behavior management. Cobeson is great at all the safety things, and we know nothing about those, but we can provide some information on connection with students and behavior management and those types of topics. So we provide a rotation of different staff, even including our district nurses, to go over health protocols and those things at those meetings. As Joe stated, just make sure you have defined protocols for accidents and incidents. And that the district, and if you're contracting out, the contractor are both aware of those and what their expectations are. Luckily in Sun Prairie, we haven't had any severe accidents. So I would say, as Joe said, you should practice those, because I'm sure if we had one, as Joe said, I'm like, I better take his advice. We should probably practice, because we have not had one and we haven't done a practice in a while. So I think that would be something definitely beneficial. Dan Cobeson. Yes, he's on.
All right. Before you move on, we had one question that popped up from Jeff. He asked us, what practice do you use for registering kids each year for transportation? And do you ask each family to submit new information each year? So in general, how are you getting families to let the transportation department know that they're riding? That's a great question. And I don't know how this worked for us this year, but our transportation office asked if we could change our registration process just a little bit. We use Skyward for our student management system, and inside there, we changed one of the registration boxes to say specifically, do you want to ride the bus again this year? Yes or no? We were finding that we were just assuming, hey, they've always ridden, they're still going to be on there. And if you keep adding them to the routes, how do you know if you can make any changes for efficiency? So we tried to add that this year, and then we did link a couple extra forms to the rules and some of the board policies and administrative guidelines too, just to kind of use that another process to reinforce. But that was what we tried to do this year, and I failed to ask them if that helped them or not. But that was a request from the transportation department in New London to try to figure out how to make that better. I don't know if anybody else on the panel has any comments of how they're asking.
I know at school district of La Crosse, we do contract out with Go Right Way, and we also send out individual letters right from the bus company to make sure that kids or kiddos will be riding on that bus, so that we make sure we can plan our routes ahead of time, to make sure that we can start our dry runs earlier. So
Yeah, and I will speak for some Prairie. So we do have online yearly registration piece through Infinite Campus. The issue that we run into is 30% or less of our families actually do complete that.
Right.
So I didn't want to tie, do you need the bus to that? Because what will happen the week before when 80% of the kids didn't say they needed the bus because they didn't fill out the registration and I don't have them routed. So I haven't found a good way in some Prairie to do that. What we kind of do the opposite. So in July, once I know all of the eligible riders, usually even by mid-July, at that point, I send out a form saying, do you want to opt out of transportation? And now, of course, not everyone fills that out either, but we do get, I think I'm up to 500 kids who have opted out of transportation. But if anyone else has a great way.
In Franklin, we do it a little of both, I guess. So we use Power School. We're also contracted with Brightway. And what we do is we've upped our new student registration now to start in December rather than later in the year. And we have a Qualtrics form that we put in there where they can fill out, do you need busing? Yes or no? And if you say yes, it's going to filter down to, do you need it AM? If so, what days? So we actually put that is it a daycare? Is it a home pickup? And then it scrolls down into the PM as well. And then we'll start back to school online check-in, I think in May. And we're looking at how we can tweak that a little bit too, because I think we run into the same problem as some Prairie. If we don't do it, all of a sudden the first week of school, we have 600 parents calling saying my kid didn't get picked up for a bus. But then that all filters right into our school information system, and the parents can see it right on Power School, what the route is, and contact us if needed.
Yeah,
I mean,
if I have to add anything,
response in, oh, sorry, Dan.
it's okay. I was just gonna second when you have such low participation in the forums, that's really what gets you. So that either reversing it or having a better way to do it is what you need to concentrate on, because if people aren't filling out the form, it makes your data bad. And again, it's all about the data. Go ahead, Joe.
Yep, just thank you, Jamie, for chiming in. If you didn't see, someone is using Qualtrics to also add parents, and then they just roll them over if they don't do. There's another one that talked about Power School and open houses as well. But I'll hand this back off, and I think, Dan, are you up next?
I think so.
Let's see here. I'm delayed. Hold on. No.
Well, I kind of.
There we go.
Too far. Okay. All right. Routing, technology, routing software. A couple things about routing software in general. It's not an easy process. First of all, it's not a replacement for routers. It's not a replacement for local knowledge. It's not a replacement for all that, but it can take some of that local knowledge and that's local information and put it into the system, but you have to be able to put it into the system. And I guess just to back up a little bit, routing software in general is not, you got to think of the school bus industry as being really small. It's definitely not as big as, let's say, Uber or Lyft. So the amount of money that's been stuck into the software is not near what they do. The other thing I would point out is Uber and Lyft are never on time. This software that we make is made to be on time. So the routing software that school districts want is on-time software. Uber and Lyft is never on time. Again, the software that we have is from smaller companies. There's lots of different companies. They all do things a little bit differently. Some are better, some are worse. And I'm guessing it's very similar to the student management software that you deal with. If you take a small company, maybe Power School, and I'm not familiar with any of them, so I don't know, but maybe it's simpler software. If you take a Infinite Campus, it's more complex software, but with complexity becomes difficulty, right? Becomes more flexible, becomes more options to answer all these questions to get things done. So sometimes you want simpler, sometimes you want it to have more power. So local knowledge and legacy knowledge is very key. You still have to have that, but you can take some of that information and put it into the software. For example, do you have you can't turn right on this street, or you can't go down this alley. These roads don't connect, or we don't go down into this subdivision because you can't turn around, that kind of information. The other thing I was going to mention is that like Google, people think, oh, I could just use Google for our routing. Well, Google doesn't know that you can pull into that farmer's driveway and turn around. Google doesn't understand that. Google wants you to make a U-turn in the middle of the road. You can't do that with a 40-foot bus. It's different. It's a different software. Timely and accurate data is very important to routing. And you guys all mentioned some of the other things about, when parents have to have their data in, all that stuff. And those dates that you set for that have to be in stone, because every time you push that back a little bit, that puts more pressure on the router to be able to get things done. Routing takes time. It's not a big easy button that you just push and it routes all the kids. It's not that easy. There has to be some local knowledge and local input into that. And communication, everybody mentioned communication over and over again, but over and over, I know that there's one thing worse than over communicating is giving bad data, because bad data makes it even worse. So it's easy to do when we start to electronically do this stuff. So it's very easy to have major issues with data. Let's say the data connection, and we've had this happen where the data connection between our routing software and the school district stopped working. We don't know why. It stopped working 2 months ago. Nobody bothered to see that it's not working. Well, that means for the last 2 months, we haven't gotten any updates on any new students. So there's problems with the system. So data is key. Data has to be manipulated. Data has to be watched to make sure it's continued to work correctly. On that level, we're almost 100%, Cobus and Bus is almost 100% connected with all our school districts we're at. And what we're trying to get to is where data goes both ways every night. So in Sun Prairie's case, every night data goes from Cobus and Buses to Sun Prairie into their Infinite Campus. Then the parents can see bus stops and bus information at night. And then the next morning, we get data back from them for new students, and it goes back and forth every night. That does actually cause problems from time to time, and Rhonda can speak to this, is we sometimes, if a new student comes in and let's say we take some time and we route that student, well, we get that student on the bus, everything is cool, except that we never notified the driver. And the parent looks in the system and sees that the bus has been routed, everything's good, they go stand on the corner. Well, the driver doesn't even stop there because it happens so quickly now. We actually have the other issue, it's too fast. So we're working around some of those issues. And that at the beginning of school, that's a big issue. The first few days of school, on some districts, we turn off the upload and download. Or actually just the upload we turn off, the download we continue until we're 2 weeks into school. Again, another one of those deadlines is that if the student's not routed on the first day of school, we hold that until, let's say, the second week of school, so that we can get things figured out to move forward. Again, one of those dates where you have to plan for all of those dates to be in place. And lots of analysis and review before sending information to the families. Again, we do that live, where we're trying to get to the live. So we actually make sure the families understand that this could change on a daily basis. Dry runs, somebody else mentioned that. On-time routing. We've actually done this a few times, particularly Oshkosh did a big announcement with the news media one year, and we had newscasters out and parents out greeting buses before the school year even started. So that was a great PR for not only for the district, it was great for the kids, it was great for us. It was just a good event all the way around. But it does also bring up that, you know, the drivers do have some input on, hey, this stop, you know, is not right. I guess I can go back to flipping all the way back to the beginning and technology and routing. Again, it's complicated because if you think about the stop at First and Main, there's a possibility of, I think it's 8 different stops at that intersection. Is it on the southeast corner? Is it on the northeast corner? Is it before the corner? Is it in the intersection? Is it, you know, where is it? There's all those things, and the computer only knows one thing. It's garbage in or garbage out. So it's whatever you put into that computer is where that stop's going to be. And we've seen it where it takes the bus all the way around the block just to get there when it could just drive by, right? Because it's on the other side of the street. Or do we have no cross at that intersection? That's the kinds of things that if we don't want the students crossing at a particular intersection, but we're going to have a stop there. Those are the things that can be put into the computer, again, teaching the computer the local knowledge. But it will never be perfect with construction, all the other stuff that's there. We can track ridership numbers and make tweaks as we go. Again, consider doing changes and you know, Rhonda said it, making changes, too many changes at once. Actually, I was going to make the example of Rhonda. They built a new school, new high school. They changed bell times, and they almost changed contractors all in the same year. That was done on purpose not to do that. I know they concentrated hard on getting us to sign another contract and extension just because of the fact that they didn't want to do that on the same year. And that's absolutely perfect. That's exactly what they should be doing, is never change all those things and then change your contractor besides. It's a recipe for disaster. So think about how you want to change things going forward a few years and how things can change. And then actual riders versus assigned riders, I think that was back to somewhat of whose question was it, about ridership and how you track that. Again, we liked not to do the forms. We would rather just start the routes and have the drivers come back to us and say Jamie's not riding or Jenny's not riding, and we change them from there, and then we go from there, and we let parents know that this is the way it is. If you want it changed, we can do it on the during the year, but not in the data that's dumped originally. Again, have a established system for the parents to request stop changes. That's a big one. Rhonda, you have a real good system for parents that if they don't like where their stop is, they have a whole process that they have to go through and establish a criteria for approving and denying those. What we run into, and I think maybe it's a big thing inside our company, that people continually are afraid that if we make a change for this parent, we make an exception for this parent and move the stop closer to their house, that parent's going to go and tell everybody else in the school district that their stop got changed, and now you've got a waterfall of changes that you need to do. And stops in general are a big thing. Established stops. Do they have to be at a corner? Do they have to be are they at houses? Are they, and again, back to Sun Prairie, I know they have lots of parks in Sun Prairie, so it's awesome that they can use those parks as bus stops. But not every community has that, so it's not a possibility. And understand from a driver's perspective, corners are a lot easier to find than house addresses, especially if you think about how dark it is in the mornings. Nowadays, it's tough to find those house addressing. They're putting them all over the place on the houses. They're not, not the same. So corner stops are much easier and are easier to establish in the computer system. I could go on and on and on about, routing and buses and stuff like that. But one thing I'll leave you with is that, Rhonda's is it on the next page, Rhonda?
Yes, it's going, I think.
There's a pretty cool, video out there. It's all about routing and planning, and it's got a lot of planning stuff in it, just particularly about routing. And it's like 3 or 4 professionals from the industry, a couple routing software, a couple large companies that do their own routing. There's some stuff there, but again, remember that the industry is not that big, and the software is not, it's not just a big old easy button. It takes folks and knowledge to do it.
Not the Staples Easy, isn't that Staples the easy
Right,
one?
right.
All right, it looks like we got one question and we'll see. How many districts are using paper route sheets for their drivers versus a digital platform of some kind? If digital, what is being used for drivers to assist on their routes?
My guess is the person's asking this is what, if you have a sub driver, do they take a piece of paper and go out and follow the paper? I'd say probably 90% of the buses in Wisconsin are doing that. There's not very many people doing a digital, as far as a tablet in the bus. We're getting there. We're getting there fast. Rhonda and we're rolling out a system that's going to have that. Again, the issue with that is really, it's amazing how much different that is than if you wanted a map on the paper or on the map to follow with your bus. There are so many dynamics in that are interesting that it can't convert over, or you have to buy Google Maps, which is $1 bazillion in order to do it. So there's definitely issues there, but it's coming and it's coming fast. Same thing with the tablets themselves. We've had issues with just reliability of these tablets in the freezing cold and the moisture and the heat in the summer, all those things. So it's not quite there, but it's definitely coming.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone else, I mean, New London said they're using paper. Some Prairie still is. Again, we have this new a new software that offers this option, but we're launching one little piece of it at a time and struggling with the first piece. So we'll get there. I don't know if anyone here using.
I know the school district of La Crosse, we're not using digital. We are still paper also yet, so.
Yeah, I think there's a few maybe school districts in the state that have, but I'm not seeing anyone here yet.
Michelle, you said electronic time cards. Is that for payroll? Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. I think we are gonna allow Mike Berry some time. I know we have some information on contract requirements and, just really knowing your contract, making sure if your contract out, what the district requirements are, what the contractor requirements are, just making sure that everything that's in there is met and followed every year. Really important. As Joe and I think Dan touched a little bit on, just making sure all of your technology is working properly. Nothing worse when you need that video, which we're going through in some Prairie because we have new technology. Nothing worse when you have that fight and the police are called and yep, sorry, didn't work today. So testing all of your cameras, GPSs, everything that you have, making sure that they're working. We're gonna actually give a little bit of new advice. Heidi is for new transportation managers, and then Mike Berry's gonna give us some closing comments.
Thank you. I'm Heidi Engel. I work for the Franklin Public School District. I'm the Auxiliary Services Coordinator. My role probably could be a little different than most or the same. I also do enrollment. I'm kind of a melting pot of things, my hands in a couple. This is actually my first full year. In fact, I think next month is 1 year that I've been in this position. And it's overwhelming. So if anyone else is in this position and you just started and you don't have any transportation background, I feel your pain, and I would just suggest ask questions to anybody and everybody. There's no dumb question, because if you don't know, you just don't know. On here, we're talking about, every bus needs a driver. We just got an article. We contract with Right Way for biggest population, but we also have 7 buses that the district utilizes for 4K special ed that we have in-house drivers. Our in-house drivers have been with us for a while, but now with Right Way, we're finding they still have a lot of sub drivers, which I think is going to be common across the state, across the country. Right Way just sent us a driver's shortage letter indicating what this looks like post-pandemic. And they shared, I was going to share the link. The Wall Street Journal had a really good article on what this looks like for bus driver shortages specifically. So on here, good, bad communication management affect the driver pool. I can't say that I'm not in tune with Right Way that far yet, I know that they have brought over, last year we were with First Student, and a number of their drivers came over to Right Way, which I think was great because they were familiar with our students and our routes, which was awesome for us. I think the bigger one is the student behavior and lack of school support. I'm seeing that not as much as lack of school support, but behavior of the students. And that's really pushing drivers away. Because if they don't feel the kids are going to listen to them, why would they want to drive a bus of 45 kids that are going to be loud, obnoxious, and potentially a safety hazard? I think here in Franklin, our principals are awesome, and back to earlier where they make their presence. They make their presence in the morning, they make their presence in the afternoon. The students are very aware what the expectations are, whether or not they always follow that. It's to be questioned, but I think as the year goes on, those behaviors start to lessen. I think you're going to see them probably increase when we get closer to Christmas break, when we get closer to spring break, when everyone's kind of just ready to be done as far as students. Last year, we were in the news. I'm looking at past accidents and news articles can affect the driver pool. Franklin was in the news last year, but it was because our contractor last minute said we have no buses for we can't accommodate your district, which was huge for us. I wasn't here at that time. I came in slightly after that, which I'm very thankful for. This year it's been much better. We have higher ridership, which is great. But again, talking about, reviewing your accident protocol, being a new transportation manager, I wasn't aware of what that was. So I kind of had to dig for that on my own and bring in other people. In a good way, we have a new buildings and grounds director who also was a transportation manager. So we worked together, and now he put me onto the safety team, which I think is huge. Not only by accidents, but things that could happen on the bus. I think we had a meeting yesterday and taking into consideration what happens if a child comes to the driver and says, I think so-and-so has a weapon. What do we do on that? These are probably in this day and age things that we really do need to consider, and how are you going to handle that? What is your protocol on that? The second bullet point, the cost of transportation has increased even faster. I think we all know gas has gone up. I don't see it going down anytime. I think salaries are expected to go up, especially, benefits have gone up. So your driver pool may become smaller, but maybe looking at talking with your board, talking with your administrator, what kind of benefits can you give to potential drivers to want, that makes it more desirable for them to work in the transportation sector. And that's kind of what more advice. Honestly, this has been super helpful for me watching everybody prior to me and what they've talked about. Because this was my first beginning of the year, and just reviewing these slides, I think really read them again. Like I said, ask questions, because you're not going to know. I love, going to the open houses and being present. I think it's important, even if you contract out, if you're the face of that transportation department, you're probably the one getting those phone calls from the parents. Why is my bus late? The bus didn't show up. Joey got hit in the head by a backpack. Whatever it may be, if you're that face, then you really should be there. So you're kind of that liaison between the bus company and the school district. That's kind of what I have.
Nice job, Heidi.
Thank you.
So, yeah, and congratulations on surviving your first start of school year in
Thank
student
you.
transportation. I really think WASBO should have some kind of a medal or some kind of a certificate we should send, to people, when they accomplish that. Yeah, I'm going to just wrap this up because I think we want to be done at 1 o'clock, right? I'm Mike Berry. I'm the executive director of WASPO, and I was a 30+ year veteran of supervising student transportation in districts that were small and medium and large. This little webinar is one of 4 that WASPO will do this year that focus on student transportation. So delighted to do this. And for those of you who are listening and thinking, oh, I wish they would talk about this or that or some other thing, please get in the chat and give us your topical ideas, and we will address them in future webinars. Okay, this is meant to be iterative conversation. So my comments are few, and they're kind of high level, especially compared to those of you who are doing this every day. But let me begin by saying thank you to you and to all the people that you work with who have been busy trying to get all the little operational problems ironed out in the last several weeks, the start of the school year. As Joe said, student transportation is a negative attention environment, right? You get noticed when things go awry. The 99% of the time things work well, you're not going to get a note saying thank you, because that's considered routine, right? It's when 1% of things go wrong, that's when you're going to get noticed. And often lately it seems to be around driver shortages, as Heidi just said. We got less than 3% unemployment right now in Wisconsin, which is effectively 100% employment. And that's a big deal. It's really making it tough, not just in the bus driver world, but custodians and food service workers and everything else. So what I just want to emphasize for those of you who are leaders in this area, when you're in a negative attention environment, it's doubly or triply important for you as the leader to be providing the positive attention, right? The thank you notes, the stand-up meetings where you thank your staff. You are in the recognition and thank you business, to keep your staff motivated and give them the recognition that they deserve, because you're not necessarily going to get it for the parents, even if you do great work. And this is an environment that's very different than when I started. In today's environment, if a parent orders a package online from some store, they'll get 6 emails or texts updating them on the desk on where their package is. It's leaving the warehouse. It's on the truck. The truck's on the highway. The highway's near your house. It's on the porch, right? And that's the expectation, right? That they're going to know all this stuff. So it's dealing with those heightened parent expectations is difficult. So you're in the cheerleader business, and not just during School Bus Driver Appreciation Week, which, as I'm sure you know, is February 12th to the 16th in 2024. February 12th to the 16th, start planning now, and make sure you recognize your drivers. One other note about this is that, unlike Las Vegas, what happens on the bus doesn't stay on the bus. If the bus comes in late, the kids are squirrely as can be. The teacher's upset. If the kids miss the breakfast line, they're hungry, and that's a big problem. If there's a fight or an argument, it tends to spill over into the classroom. So good, reliable, safe bus transportation is incredibly important to instruction. It is a critical support for instruction. You're kind of in the leadership business of eliminating those distractions and those problems. So I'm a huge, appreciator of the work that you guys do. I've got one quick story I'm going to tell in about a minute. I just want to call this out. It had to do with a school district that was having a bunch of controversy here at the beginning of the school year over student transportation, mostly rooted in bus driver shortage issues. And in that community, the parents were upset. And of course, they went to the school board members, and the school board members demanded to add student transportation problems as an agenda item on the board meeting. And they were just going to have at the administration and the superintendent, just kind of the MO in that community. But I was really impressed by the way the superintendent handled it. And I thought I would pass this on to you, because I just liked the way it was done. This, when they got to that issue on the agenda, the superintendent sort of took hold of it and said, you know, look, I understand that we are going to talk about the difficulties that we've had in transportation at the start of the year, but let me begin by reminding everybody of what we already agree on. You know, we already agree that, you know, every qualified student is entitled to safe, reliable transportation. We agree that it is super important to support, you know, instruction. You know, we agree that we have to earn parent trust every day, you know, and just kind of went through all those shared agreements that to be sort of frame the issue. And then, you know, went on to say, you know, everything that's happened at the start of the school year, none of this caught us unaware. None of it. We've been working on this since June. We've prepared as best as we could. We've eliminated, you know, almost every problem possible, but we are still left with a subset of issues, and we're working on those hard. You know, it's not a policy issue. It's not a contract issue. It's not a finance issue. This is purely an operational issue, and we're working it hard. It's rooted in, you know, driver shortage. You know, essentially, you know, they just, they have no bench. You know, if a couple of drivers calling sick or, you know, with a family issue, you know, they can't manage to you know, run the routes as they normally would prefer to do. So I just wanted to pass that along as, you know, if you are confronted by a parent, by a principal, take time to step back and say, all right, look, we all agree this is important, and we all agree that we're trying hard. And let's not demonize the bus drivers or the bus company or the dispatcher, right? Let's talk this through in a mature, you know, adult fashion. And in that instance, when I was watching, it basically disarmed the school board because they just wanted to scream and yell about how nobody cares, no one's paying attention, and everyone's awful. And this is just another example of the school district screwing up. And by the superintendent making those preemptory comments, it just really changed the discussion and made it much more positive. So that's my little success story for dealing with difficult circumstances. All right, I went a minute and a half over. I apologize, Rhonda. I'll turn it back over to you.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Mike, for your sharing your stories.
Another one of
And
my sermons. It's a sermon from Reverend Mike.
yes,
at WASBO.
that's why we put you last.
That's right. Okay, well, our
Just
service is ended. Go in peace to love and serve the Lord.
no. It's so great hearing your feedback, and you've had so much experience with transportation in the districts and at a higher level of overseeing transportation and overcoming some struggles in the districts, I think, that you've worked with as well.
I still have some welts that haven't healed yet. But like I said, it's super important work, and it's super important to value it.
Well, thank you everyone for coming today to our first session. Again, I believe you're gonna receive a feedback form. Is that correct, Caitlin? For this session, and please fill that out. If you have any future topics you would like to discuss, please reach out to anyone on the first slide from the panel and let us know if you have any topics. And we will see you hopefully at our next tidbit session, and I don't have the date right now.
We'll send it out. Yeah, we'll get that out to everybody. Just pay attention to wasbo.com or check your emails. We'll be advertising it. They're quarterly, so look for one in about 8 weeks or so. So yeah, keep up the great work, everyone.